Hey, nobody's better prepared for a technology issue than I've been many issues.
That's the whole baseball team.
As efficiently as possible as we start this meeting. Do I hear a motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second, so we are now out of closed session. Ms. McBeath, could you please read the certification of the closed session, please?
All right, yes, Mr. Mead. Whereas the Meade County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2, 3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the New Kent County School Board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that New Kent County School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirement by Virginia law were discussed in closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening this closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the New Kent County School Board.
Do I hear a motion to approve the certification of the closed session?
I move we approve
approve the certification of closed session.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Second, we have a vote. Any discussion? Is that all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. This approval of the certification of the closed session. Now we will call to order the Pledge of Allegiance as we stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, thank you for everyone who is here this evening for this school board meeting and for the recognition of all of our nominees and all of our folks that are here today. Our first recognition this evening is to recognize the 2023 State 3A baseball champions, and this actually has a pretty near and dear to my heart. I have had the privilege of coaching a handful of these boys in middle school when we first started, and so it is great to see the progress of these young men and their coaches. Thank you so much for making this happen. So, Dr. Nichols.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mead. Tonight we recognize them first. New Kent has a lot of champions and a great history when it comes to athletics and academics. But this 2023 state championship baseball team was nothing short of incredible. So, and they didn't win all their games by like 15, 20 runs either. I had long, dark hair when the season started. And some of these comebacks and thrillers, and they beat some incredible teams along the way. So we just wanted to recognize them tonight and thank them for their service and thank them for bringing a first to New Kent. First of more. So, right? And some of these young men have already graduated and came back, so thank you for coming back today. Many of them are returning for this season, and I believe following social media, we've already started working out and getting ready, so it was good. All right, so I recognize each of you, so you can either do your baseball hat tip, how you do that, or wave, however you want to do, but we want to celebrate each of you. So our 3A state champion baseball team, we'll start off with Braden Heath. We can clap for him. It's okay. So this next young man, we had an exchange as we got into postseason about I really like coming to games. Can you keep the streak going? And he promised me he would, and he did. So that's none other than Carson Seelig. We also have Niall Gammon, Hunter Jesse. And when they told me a freshman was going to pitch the championship game, I got a little bit of heart palpitations, but none other than Lane Boyette. These coaches know what they're doing. I'm just a superintendent of a fan. We also have Matthew Gentry. Pulling out all the stops, Nate Thomas Wilson. Thomas, I may let you take my seat. All right, he's ready. We also have Tyler Warren, Ashton Whitlow, Brooks Parker. I also want to congratulate Dresden Davis. Did I say Tyler Warren? That's the Tyler Young. Okay. And Jonah Sorrell. We do have some players that weren't here tonight, but I will recognize them. So Michael Hetzel, Dylan Nichols, Jason Hobson, Parker Haynes, and Logan Hodge. Brett Lookhart. None of this work can happen without the tireless efforts and the incredible coaching of our coaches So we have Mr. John Corbin, or Coach Corbin this evening. And we also have Coach Trevor Roman. In supporting their efforts, Mr. Valdriga, your high school principal, is also with us.
Hey, Trevor, can you and Corbin come up here and
Yeah, I
take a
said, let's
picture
take
as
a
well?
class picture, for
Yeah.
real.
And also Trevor and Coach here.
Oh.
Yeah, and Trevor was coach of the year as
Trevor is
well.
our coach of the year.
Yeah, we're smiling. I'm standing on the ticket.
Everybody need this way. Okay, thanks.
I
Good.
also want to thank, before you move, we have tremendous fan support and family support, and our families are in New Kent are incredible, but our baseball families, like y'all are something else with your support and your push, and so I'd love to give a round of applause, because you guys wouldn't be here without them. And I'm not one to rush the school year, but I can't wait till school year. But thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you.
I mean, y'all can stay up there all week. You guys give us
Hey, congratulations. Thank you, guys. Good job,
We do
guys.
have some additional celebrations coming up with the baseball team.
Good job, guys. Congratulations. Congratulations. Good job. Good job. Good job, guys. Good. Good job, Brent.
Thank you.
Hey, Carson. Good job. Hey, Coach Cool. Good job.
Thank you.
And families, you're welcome to stay for the whole board meeting. but-
Yeah, families, you can be dismissed. Thank you so much.
For some reason, used to do these. So, I got that as the first. The jury box came in handy today. So,
Now we're going on to our, to follow our agenda to 3B, which is the recognition of the World Physical Therapy Day on September the 8th, 2023, and the National PT Month in October.
Sorry, you got pinch hitter here tonight.
Ross Miller.
continuing the baseball thing. We have to take that.
Yeah, so wanted to celebrate our work with our physical therapists. On September 8th was World Physical Therapy Day, and then in October is National Physical Therapy Month. And we have two great physical therapists that work with our students here in New Kent, and so if you want to stand up, Barb Riley and Michelle Favor. So they do a tremendous amount. They work with approximately 40 students, is what 45 students Dr. Schermeyer talking about, and then and so support the development of the child, both physically as well as there are the little graphic there. If you look on Board Docs, there are tremendous mental health things that come from physical therapy as well, and so they support that as well. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you. So now item C is the recognition of National IT Professionals Day on September 19th, 2023. Mr. Sean Terry.
And Mr. Mead, I did say earlier, if we're gonna have a technology issue, tonight's the night.
That's
The
right.
entire
We got every advanced propeller head in New Kent County here, man. Let me tell
Every
you what.
resource is in this room right now.
That's
Sorry.
right.
Right.
That's right.
Break right after they leave. Yeah, it's National IT Professionals Day. It's September 19th, and I'm very excited to honor my team. Guys, come on up. Real quick introduction. So we've got Kenny Tate, who is our veteran team member. And then we've got Regional Tennis Coach of the Year, Brian Davis, is one of our newer team members. And then Dr. Nichols always stresses about the 3 E's when we talk about our graduates. And so we're covering 2 out of the 3 E's with the next 3 guys. We actually hired 3 graduates from last year. So in June, they graduated from high school. They worked with us all summer in a part-time capacity, and we're keeping them on. And now they've all enrolled in IT classes at college now. So they're going to be working with us and expanding their growth in their career in information technology. So we're really thrilled to have them. And so that's Colby Page, Jimmy Moore, and Fisher Malley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
And board members, it's an odd transition when you have a student from last year that's now an employee.
I bet.
And you gotta shift a little bit with them, but you still wanna be, you know, like, come on, did you go to class? Have you done this? Have you, you know? But, it's just an incredible opportunity to hire your own students to
That's
further
great.
work. So
That's
thank you,
awesome.
Mr. Terry, for leading that.
Item D under recognitions is the recognition of the VSBA Media Honor Roll recipient, Dr. Nichols.
Yes, sir. So each year we have the opportunity to recognize outstanding coverage in media. So this year we did 2. You know, the New Kent Charles City Chronicle is incredible because they cover every aspect of our schools. Doesn't matter how small the initiative or how grand it is, they're always there to cover it, and they're very fair in their covering. When we get it right, they say that. When we get it wrong, they say that, but they're just consistent. Whereas there are other outlets that only cover us when something happens. New Kent Charles City Chronicle is always there. So we nominated both Andre Jones and Rob Johnson for the honor roll. So we do want to recognize them officially tonight. I think Mr. Jones is like the 10-time reigning champion of media honor roll. If not longer, at least 5 times since I've been here. So Mr. Jones is with us tonight, so we do want to honor him.
Our next recognition is Recognize Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th through October 15th. Mr. Miller.
Yes, Mr. Mead and members of the board, Dr. Nichols, from September 15th to October 15th is Hispanic Heritage Month. And this was the idea of Hispanic Heritage Month started with Lyndon B. Johnson. And he had a specific day in September in which we honored the many contributions of Hispanic citizens in the United States, and then Ronald Reagan expanded that all the way down to a month. Here in New Kent, we have approximately 6% of our student population is Hispanic, and so they bring a lot of culture to the division, as well as they're wonderful students to be around. We want to also just acknowledge the contributions around the country that different people have played that are of Hispanic origin. So just jump slide forward real quick. We did send out to all teachers basically a guide on different aspects of Hispanic culture, as well as different lesson ideas that they can use in their classrooms around the division.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next is Dr. Nichols, the recognition of the VSBA Achievement Awards.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mead. Each year, the Virginia School Board Association honors the work of board members through an award system. Board members at your place, each of you has received recognition from the Virginia School Board Association for your dedication, your service, and your attendance of Virginia School Board workshops, conferences, events, and so forth. So no small feat for all 5 board members to be recognized by the board. I do want to give Ms. Barber a little bit of additional recognition. Ms. Barber received the Award of Distinction, which is the highest level, and she received this last year as well. To earn this honor, you have to have at least 84 credits over 2 years. So that's a lot of learning and a lot of time spent as a board member. Last year, only 110 board members in the entire Commonwealth received that highest honor. So it is not very easy to get, and Ms. Barber received that this year. So each of you has your award at your in your folder and your pin that corresponds to them. So I just want to say, on behalf of VSBA, not that I represent them, thank you, for your service and being on a board dedicated to learning and growing together. So thank you, Mr. Meany.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols, and thank you, Ms. Barber, for your hard work, as well as all of the other board members in attending and in making New Kent County Public Schools a priority in your life. Now, the next agenda is the consent agenda. Is that board members, by now you've had the opportunity to review the items listed on the consent agenda, which includes minutes from previous meetings, monthly bills and payroll, and the superintendent's recommendation regarding personnel and student matters. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, then we'll go to a vote. All in favor to accept the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The consent agenda is approved. Now on to new business. The acknowledgement and review of crisis management, emergency and evacuation plans under Essential Goal 2, the implementation of continuously evaluating the crisis and management plans. Mr. Hockman.
And Mr. Mead, as Mr. Hockman approaches the podium, each year we bring to you the crisis plans for acknowledgement. Mr. Hockman and his team have done an incredibly heavy lift this summer and strengthening our protocols. So we've talked a lot about some of the work we've done in security festivals, but how we train and how we prepare and what that looks like is even as critical as anything else. So he's going to expand on that a little bit this evening, kind of share some of that with you. So, Mr. Hockman.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, Dr. Nichols, thank you. As Dr. Nichols said, we're here tonight. We have an annual review of the crisis management, the emergency plan, and our evacuation plans. That's related to strategic goal number 2, as you stated. What happens at the school level? Each school gets together, they have a safety and crisis training that includes all staff at each school, that is led by our site safety leads at each school and in conjunction with district level site safety teams. You can move forward, please. Next slide. Crisis bags are something that we're utilizing across the division. Right now, we have that implemented at all 3 elementary schools. We're going to have that very shortly at the secondary. Each of the members of the team goes through what the crisis bags are for, what's in them, how they're to be used. As you can see, there's a Stop the Bleed kit. They go through their different colored cards, the Star of Life, their OSHA kits. They're with the staff at all times. The next part of that is a review of the crisis manuals at each school. Some of that is the same throughout all of the schools. The other part of that is specific to each school because the footprint of each school is a little different, so they have to review what they will do in the case of an emergency at each school. Each teacher is expected to be familiar with those things. In case of an emergency, our hope is that it is never to be utilized, but obviously things happen, not just really severe things. Sometimes you'll have a student with a nosebleed, and we have to go out and make sure that we're following the proper protocols for things like that. Other things that we are reviewing, our emergency system across the division is Catapult. While that is something we have a lot of experience with, it doesn't get utilized a whole lot. So we have to make sure that all of our staff, new and returning, are familiar with that, understand how to use that. We also are implementing our new procedures for how we deal with fire drills. If you're as old as me, and some of you probably are not, back in the day, the fire drill would go off and everyone exits the building very quickly. That is no longer the protocol of what we want to do. It's more of a read and react situation. Schools have not burnt down in a very long time. That's because of some of the standards we put into place in building and all the drills that we do. Right now, we are looking at revamping the fire drill procedures for all of our schools, and we've started already through the support of the district safety team. So right now, we're revitalizing that. Some of the schools have done a great job. We've had some drills already, so we're looking at how we do that to be a little bit safer. Another thing that the schools have been going through is locked door policies in our schools. So that is something that, while it's a bit of an inconvenience to have the door locked at all times, we do know that is the safest way to go throughout the school day. So that's something new that we're doing. And finally, also, we call it You Try. Typically, our administrators are the ones that are leading a drill. When something real happens, it could be that a staff member is expected to notify and get everyone started in the drill. That is something that we're asking all of our schools to do this year, having different staff to start the drill so that we could have some real life experience. So that's something that we're doing. Dr. Nichols talked briefly about the heavy lift that was done this summer. We were very fortunate. He approved us going to the state safety conference. All of our division leadership team went, and one of the things that came away with that is something called SRP. And what SRP is, it stands for Standard Response Protocol. So what does that mean? So we've been doing drills for a very long time in schools. And those drills, as you know, are fire drills, we do lockdown drills, we do shelter-in-place drills. We do a kind of a branch off of shelter-in-place for tornado and earthquake drills. And each of those drills has a specific response for it. So we knew what to do for a fire drill. We knew what to do for a lockdown drill. But if there was ever a situation where we had an incident, we maybe did not have a response to that incident. So what is being recommended, and is really something that is cutting edge, is something called Standard Response Protocol. Here are the 5 responses that we could have in any school: hold, secure, lockdown, evacuate, and shelter. If we had any type of incident at the school level, we would implement one of those or a combination of those responses. So it doesn't matter what the incident is, we have responses in place that can keep the school very safe. So there are some real advantages to doing the Standard Response Protocol. It is very easy to understand, it's very easy to implement, it gets everyone on the same page, and SRP is completely 100% action-based. When you look at this right here, it's a uniform plan and practice response. What's great about this, as a kindergartner, I will be training on the same responses I'm going to be utilizing when I'm a senior. In the past, you would have a different thing that you did based upon the grade level of the school that you were at. Now we have students that will have 13 plus years of knowing what to do in any type of incident. So that's one of the advantages. Another advantage, everybody's on the same page. Whenever we have an incident, we would have our local sheriff's department, fire department, and potentially outside resources that are entering the building. All of those folks now are trained on SRP. It's a common language. It makes it very easy for them to come into the building, to understand what's going on, and to keep everybody on the same page. And finally, SRP is action-based. It gives a very descriptive format of what to do when you have an incident that happens. There will be practice many times, there will be no surprises, kids will feel very comfortable, or as comfortable as they can when we have an incident, so they'll know exactly what to do. We made copies, we have these printed off. In each classroom we have a poster that has all of the responses on it. They are also throughout the building in very strategic places. Our hope is that they become second nature to everyone. They'll see them, they'll understand what it means, they'll know exactly what to do. As I said, we hope we never have a severe emergency where we have to use them, but little things do happen. Kids can get hurt and fall, nosebleed, things of that nature, and sometimes we'll have to hold people in class. It's not a big deal, but what we really wanted to create was a system where there was uniformity across all of our grade levels and all of our schools to make it very easy for our staff and our students to respond when we had a critical incident.
So, and Hockman talked a lot about our schools. And when you think lockdown and you think emergency, you typically go to worst case scenario. Last week we had a middle school student who had a seizure. Well, we did a hold. Nobody was in danger. We need to take care of that kid who was getting ready to have a class change. So they implemented a hold. The beauty of that is everybody knows what a hold means. And not only internally, but also our partners with Sheriff's Department, New Kent Fire Rescue, it's all the same language. So when you get the catapult alert, you get a phone, internally you get a phone call, you get a text and an email. If you see secure, you know that. And everybody who gets it knows. So we know that we're reacting to something. Hockman and I were driving to the middle school actually when that happened, and we had a hold. So we knew that really we had to clear the hallways and those pieces. We knew exactly what we were walking into. So we've been drilling and we've been doing this work. This just takes us to another level of consistency and a systematic approach. So you're at George Watkins, a hold is the same equipment and so forth. So while we are acknowledging the crisis plans, I thought it was a missed opportunity if we didn't really share some of the work that we've been doing to keep our schools even safer.
Quick question, is this
Yes.
uniform across multiple schools so that when teachers, is this something that a lot of schools are utilizing so that if a teacher transfers from one school to another?
It's cutting edge, so I think more and more are moving to this. Some of the national associations, which are kind of out there, they are promoting the use of this. This organization that puts out SRP does not charge anything. They have some rules about utilizing their materials, but they provide a lot of what you need to get started. A family that had a critical incident in another state was behind this and kind of funded the beginning of this. It's all research-based, it's best practices, so more and more school divisions are moving this way.
That's right.
It becomes part of our induction for staff, just as we do Power School and those pieces, SRP becomes part of that too.
A couple of questions. Can you go back to the crisis bags
Yep.
slide?
I'm gonna ask the
Thank
same
you.
question you were, yeah.
Okay. I think it's the third or fourth slide.
Fourth slide.
What is the Star of Life?
Star Life, so if we had a situation where we had to have emergency personnel come into the building and we were in a lockdown situation, Star Life would indicate that we need immediate support for a staff member or a student. That's a sticker that goes on the door so that the emergency personnel coming in that know that this classroom needs immediate support.
Okay.
Who puts the sticker on the door?
It would typically be a teacher. If the teacher is the one that's in need of help, the students would know that, hey, we need to put a
Okay.
sticker up.
So if you're ever at our elementary schools and you see the red bags that they sling over their shoulder, that's their crisis bag there. And every person has them. So you have everything we believe you would need in the event of any crisis.
So like when they got on the playground, they would take the bag.
Yes, sir.
Bags. Some of our principals are really serious, which is good. If you leave your classroom without your bag, you can expect to have a good conversation with that principal. And I think that's a good policy. But it also has other things in there, your OSHA kit.
So does that relate to bus drivers, or how does that?
Bus drivers have, they don't have the bag, but they have some of the materials as well.
Okay.
And we are, what you'll see later, I'll be back up here when we talk about a transfer of funds. We are ordering more bags. Our plan is to outfit the entire division, all staff, which would include bus drivers with bags.
So, I mean, I think it's a great question, Mr. Lee. We could be doing a secure.
I'm just thinking like at the end of the school day,
Yeah.
you know, when bus drivers are like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, bus drivers have already received some of the kits and stuff. What we want to do is sort of make it uniform. Elementary sort of got together the power of three, and we saw that, hey, this looks really good. The other schools wanted to jump in, and then we said we might as well include transportation as well. So there'll be some uniformity in that. I think we're ordering in another 60 bags, I believe, or 250 bags, excuse me.
That's great. Any more questions?
Not to jump into another topic, Mr. Mead, but I'll share about an upcoming town hall that we're going to do. Mr. Hopkins is going to do a safety and security piece for the community, for families too. Because that, when we do have an incident, what we're realizing, you know, we're in the third week of school, that while we've transitioned to this new language, families know lockdown and they know fire drill.
Yeah.
So to make sure a family knows, here's what hold means, here's, you know, those kind of pieces. So,
And it's interesting, we had one of our members of our team's child went through the first fire drill, and the question was asked, hey, what did y'all do? And he said, well, we didn't really leave class. The teacher did this, so you look, you use your senses, you look, you smell, and then we communicate through catapult what we need to do. So we can evacuate a part of the building if we had to, but we also know that there are some folks out there, sometimes they don't have the best intentions, so we want to make sure we're not exiting the building all at one time.
and that came through our partnership with the fire department. It's like, you don't need to evacuate
Yeah.
immediately unless you know you're in that danger. Because think about, you know,
That's high
Mr. Godric in high
vulnerability
school,
right there.
we're sending 1,100 kids out at alarm. You hate that we have to think that way,
Yeah.
but we think that way every day so we
Can't
can
do
keep
that.
people
Yeah,
safe. So we
because everybody becomes a soft target at that point.
Right.
Is that, and I think it's an interesting concept because I'm hoping, what my hope and my prayer is that we can make this universal, meaning, for instance, I'll just use this example. For the two childcare centers that we have, both of them, we take care of probably 120 before and after school children. Is that, in theory, those childcare centers should be following the same protocols because their students are already trained. And if we can get that to be universal, then what happens is these students are already prepped for it versus them doing something completely different in their childcare centers. Or even for us, from a church perspective, if we're doing the same thing, then everybody in the community is on the same page.
I'm sure we'd be willing to partner for best
You know,
practice.
do that for childcare centers, especially before and after school, because if these bus drivers, they get ready to drop off at childcare centers. Well, they may run into a situation and they said, you can't get off the bus right now. We're waiting for the sheriff's department. We're waiting for this. Well, if the childcare centers don't know that protocol, they're going to be all irritated because it says, what do you want me to do? Just stand here for the next 2 hours?
Well, I think we could put that together and invite folks, because I'm also thinking Parks and Rec, who
Right.
utilizes our.
Correct. Yeah, they have before and after school as
It
well.
doesn't utilize our buildings, but, you know,
Yeah.
those kids that are going there know our protocols.
Yeah, and so maybe that's
So-
something we can universally do for the community.
Absolutely.
So,
We can make that up.
yeah, good.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. The next item under new business is the SOL accreditation update. Mr. Miller.
Me, members of the board, Dr. Nichols, each fall, we do take a look back at the previous year, and the state puts out its accreditation reports, and so usually we like to sort of give you a heads up that that's coming out, but it came out last week, and so this is the first meeting we had to go over that data.
I think does it still officially come out on the 21st, or are they done with
It's
that?
it's out.
Yeah, we had a surprise announcement of accreditation, so, well, the state did, but anyway.
Yeah. So I wanted to first go over a little bit about some of the definitions that come into accreditation. So most people traditionally are used to a pass rate. And so if you go on our school quality profiles and you look under assessment, the assessment tab, you will see a straight pass rate. The accreditation, we had moved to a combined rate, which takes a look at both the pass rate plus gives students who did not pass previous year an opportunity to count towards growth, to acknowledge that, hey, if you're starting at a lower point and you're still making a significant amount of growth, we want to recognize that as well, if kids or if divisions are moving students in that direction. So.
Ross, can I jump in just 1 second? Just there's been some misunderstandings about this. So Ross used the word "we." He's meaning the Virginia Department of Education. So the Department of Education makes all these assessments. They score all these assessments. They do all of that. None of that is done internally. So we've had some questions about, well, if you make the assessment, we don't. We get them, or kids get them
You
electronically.
just submit the data, right? And then they compilate everything and they,
We don't even submit the data. They take the test on basically on a provided system, and it's scored all off-site, and all the data work's done there, and then
So-
basically give it back to us.
so there's no way we can
Ross and I
manipulate the
sitting
data.
side by side are taking different versions of the same assessment. And then we hit submit as kids, and then we
Okay.
find out how Ross and Brian did. So we
From
just
the
have
state-
test booklets and the whole 9 yards. It's a lot.
So is there one test at the state level, or are there different versions that are filtered out throughout the?
Right, so it used to be, when it was paper, there was one version by sort of region and that you would have. Now, the tests are so sophisticated where there's a massive bank of questions, and each child that sits down is going to get a different set of questions than the child on either side of them or anywhere in the state. So the likelihood of any two kids in the state getting the same one is diminished quite a bit. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Now, the assessment people take out of care of the validity and reliability. Everybody's getting really the same assessment and the
Right,
same
right,
skills.
right.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad we don't have to do it.
So the other thing, so along with SOL scores, another thing they look at is chronic absenteeism, and so that's been a new measure in the last couple of years. And so they're looking at students who miss more than 10% of the year, and that's whether it's an excused or an unexcused absence. And to that, for us, that equates to basically you can miss up to 17 days in the school year. and not be chronically absent. Students that came today are chronically considered chronically absent.
And I tell you, coming out of the pandemic, this has been a tough transition for families. So data across the state does not look good. So kind of working with families about the importance of attendance. I'm working on a video, my September video is going to be about attendance, and just reminding that, you know, there's a great graph that I saw today, and it's too late to put in the presentation, about your test score versus your attendance, and just a correlation. It makes common sense, but just to remind families that high school moves at a rapid rate, middle school moves fast, and even elementary, just every day you're here is important. So
Mr. Miller, I don't want to derail your presentation, but
I'm already doing that. Mr. Sorry.
if a child is already chronically absent from school, what happens? Parent or guardian gets a letter? Kind of walk me through how that works.
So it's actually starts well before that. So in New Kent, we have students can have up to 10 excused absences a year on a parent's note. But before that, we have certain basically thresholds that when students miss 5 or 7 days, we're going to send a letter home and say, hey, we need to talk about attendance. And if they're unexcused, then those letters also lead to planning meetings where they come in, meet with administration, meet with counseling, and talk through, hey, what's going on that's keeping you from coming to school. One of the things that's new coming in from COVID, you'll notice my 2 little graphics that I threw on here, is we've always had like students who missed for either being sick or we had during times of year where we have families who go on vacation for a week at a time. But the upper right, and that's sort of a medical symbol. One of the things that we've had a lot more is mental health concerns, and where we'll have doctors who will write basically an intermittent note. Child can miss anytime this comes up in their life. Anytime they're struggling with this mental health or chronic like migraines and stuff like that, has been a growing number of students. So that has impacted here as well. And so we do try to partner with families, whether it's excused or unexcused, on figuring out, hey, what's keeping your child from being able to be at school, and how can we remedy that and eliminate barriers.
And we've evolved our work with students who have chronic illness or chronic conditions to, you know, we can do home-based, we can do some online work, and so just strengthen that communication with families so that they're not missing. Bottom line, if you're missing 17 days, you're probably not doing well. And if you do that across a couple of years, you know, you fall behind, you know, the recipe for dropout and those kind of pieces. So building strong attendance habits early, you know, it's just like, you know, members of the division leadership team, like we expect them to be here. If they miss 17 days across a year without some sort of, you know, that's not good for your workplace either unless you have. So we're just building those habits, but this is the only indicator that we don't completely control. And that's we don't completely control anything. But you know, this is a partnership with parents to make sure kids are in school.
I just think it's a terrible metric, though. I mean, and I think we would all agree in some form, it's a terrible metric when you use absences as a litmus test if they are excused. Like, why even write the word excused or underexcused? It doesn't matter, because it's just an absence by their standard, correct?
Yeah, so that's the distinction between absenteeism and truancy. Truancy looks at unexcused. So there's no real reason, you're just not coming.
You don't have to go to court for excused absences, but you would for unexcused absences.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really,
Yeah.
I mean, you could, I mean, not to go off the rails even further, but, you know, if you have COVID, you have to be out for 5 days or something.
Well, that's my whole point. If it's an
that can happen a
excuse,
couple
then
times in a year, you're already pushing.
you're still dinged for it. It doesn't matter.
But if you just choose not to come to school,
Yeah.
that's a truancy issue.
So our chronic number will never be 0, but what we're working on is weeding out the kids that truly had to miss that time because of those circumstances, and then kids who families. That's kind of our work and what we can kind of tease out. Yeah, I don't disagree, Mr. Mead. It's a tough one for us.
Yeah.
And as Dr. Newman was saying, the other work that we're doing is what are the alternatives that we can provide while a child is out and be able to count those
Correct.
present.
Yeah.
So how can we still get them services while they cannot be in the building?
Yeah, because again, if it's just use, I'll even use the part about vacation. if it's something that is, and maybe it could be military related or whatever, is that there is a possibility that you could send the work home with that student, so it's not deemed as an absence, quote unquote.
Right.
Okay.
And our teachers have been incredible about providing virtual support and
Right.
the different pieces to try to, work through it. All right, Ross.
All right, so general summary, just off the bat, all 5 schools are fully accredited. So the designations there could be accredited with warning, accredited with conditions, or unaccredited. But all 5 schools are just fully accredited. There aren't any overall any categories that are in level 3 at the overall, meaning our overall combined rate for English, or our overall combined rate for math, or our overall combined rate for science. None of those are in the level 3. If they were, then we would have some schools with accredited conditions or warnings or something. So the majority of accreditation categories are at level 1. I'll go through what all of them are, but they are at level 1. And then our areas of focus you'll see as we go through the schools are the achievement gap areas for English. So the achievement gap areas, when you look at subgroups, when you look at different demographic groups, Black, Asian, Alaskan Native, and then when you jump into students with disabilities and ESL, those populations, those are considered achievement gap populations. You look at the difference between them and your overall pass rate. If it's significant, then that's an area of concern. So, all right, so we'll start with the elementary, and I need to change that slide. All right, so NKES accreditation summary. This is the page. If you go to the accreditation portion of school quality profile, this is the first thing you'll see. And what it does is it breaks down the 6 areas of school quality, which is what our accreditation is measured over, and tells you where we're at. As you can see here, New Kent Elementary Schools will say all green, and they're all level 1, and that's the top performance you can have. And these are each of the indicators. You have academic achievement in English, achievement gap for English. So that's an overall statement on all those achievement gap areas put together. We're at level 1. Academic achievement for math overall is level 1. Achievement gap for math is also, and then science, and then chronic absenteeism. You'll see at the elementary and middle, those are the 6, and then when we get to high school, there will be a couple more. So here's where New Kent Elementary School specifically, this is a comparison from last year to this year. And so when you look at overall combined rates, our English went from an 86 to an 89%, math from an 89 to 92%, and our science took a nice jump from 62 to 83% pass rate. The one achievement gap that was at a level 2 was students with disabilities in English specifically. And so, so that's an area of focus for them and for us as a division this year.
Mr. Miller, so in our school division, these groups, what numbers of students are we talking about?
So in an individual school, it depends on the subgroup. Students with disabilities, we have, do some math in my head here, approximately 30 at a grade level as a division. And so these are very small numbers here.
So 30 across all the schools, or just at New Kent
So
Elementary?
like at elementary, out of, so about 30 at each grade level in elementary school across the
So on average, we have 30 kindergartners in New Kent who are students with disabilities, and we have 30, now they may be distributed across the 3, and they are. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then, there we go. So George Watkins, their accreditation summary, same as New Kent Elementary School, they're level 1 in every area. Right. And here's their school, one to the next. It's pretty much identical if you look at that. They're pretty much very similar growth. One difference is they did not have any achievement gaps that fell out of the level 1. So all of their achievement gaps are at the top level.
And that was not the case the year prior. Tammy's, Ms. Krajerik's focus work was around achievement gaps. And I've actually nominated them for an award for closing gaps nationally, and we'll see if they get that. New Kent Elementary was all green the year before, so Dr. Stan continues that push. Ms. Krajerik has done an incredible job in year 1 of closing some of those gaps. So very proud of that.
Yeah, they, on the previous slide, they were not green all the way down last year. They had one yellow, and now they're all green, so. Alright, so this is Quinton Elementary School. This is their first year with accreditation measurements, and so they are green everywhere except for that achievement gap in English. And we'll see which achievement gaps they missed it in. And basically to drop from green to a yellow, if you have more than one achievement gap that is in the yellow, then that whole section goes yellow. Put that. All right, so there's their overall pass rates on the left. Again, they don't have a comparison to look at, but English 84%, math 82nd%, and science at the 70th percentile. Our achievement gaps that for focus coming out of that, economically disadvantaged is students with disabilities in English, and then students with disabilities in math. They, as a school, have our largest of the elementary. They have our largest economically disadvantaged population. They also have our largest students with disabilities population at the elementary level.
You know, what's interesting about that I guess internally and community-wise, we created that by default just because of redistricting. You know, when we redistrict, we had to divide everybody up. So when you had to make up a district for Quinton Elementary, wherever that was found economically, it just happened to fall in that category.
Yeah, so that happens. The students with disabilities, we also do some special programs that are specifically housed there.
So they by default they captured a few more students than the other two.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so then we jump to our secondary schools, middle and high. All right, so this is the middle school, and you'll know, so they have two yellows. One is still achievement gap in English. The other one, chronic absenteeism is and at middle and high, this we had an increase both in chronic absenteeism. They just barely missed. It was really right on the cusp of the level ones, but they just barely missed it.
And when you look at data across the state, across the nation, high school attendance is the worst. Middle school is next, and then elementary is the best. So the more the parents are in control, the better the better the attendance is, and you know. And I preach that to parents all the time. You know, as your kid gets older, you need to be more involved and not less.
Push in and don't pull back. So our academic achievement here in English went from a 78 to 76, math 89 to an 86, and in science, this defied, you'll notice every area or every level we went up in science, which is defined the state's averages there. If you look across the state, that's an oddity. But we went from 53 to 66%. So still not quite where we want it to be, but very close. And that should be green actually. Our achievement gaps very similar to what we've seen in elementary. Except we had also English, Black students, English learners, and economically disadvantaged. And then we do have one. This is our only level 3 in the division, which is students with disabilities at the middle school level. Then at the high school, you'll notice we jumped from 6 to 8 indicators. And so we're green everywhere except, again, achievement gap in English and chronic absenteeism. The other two, sorry, before you jump, is graduation completion index and dropout rate. The graduation completion index, what that does is it takes a look at every way in which a student could graduate or not graduate and assigns a point value to that. And then as a school, they look at your total population, what point value could you possibly get, and then what did you get, and it has to be within a certain range. So, dropout rate, they're looking at for a percentage of dropouts. Here's our scores at the high school level, and all the way up until here, from 3rd through 8th, every student takes a reading test, every student takes a math test, and then you take a science test at 5th and 8th grade. At high school, it becomes a little bit more complicated because for English, it's all your 11th graders, and that's it. So they don't take an English test between 8th grade and 11th grade, and then they take both reading and the writing assessment. So that gets combined to give you this score for English. So we went from 92% last year to an 86% this year. Then math, that is based on Algebra 1, Geometry, or Algebra 2. And so we went from 86% to an 83%, and then Science 86 to an 87%. The only achievement gap in which we weren't at a level 1 and level 2, this is another level 3, and that's students with disabilities. So then our graduation completion index, we held steady at 94.5% of the max, and then our dropout rate went from 1.6 to 3.73. 3.73 for us is approximately 6 to 7 students, and we'll say we had a few interesting pieces there where we had students who moved out of state. They let us know they were moving out of state, but they never re-enrolled anywhere. And so that still comes back on us. So, that was-
Now, is some of that just a percentage because the class grows? Because you have more students by percentage?
Shouldn't be, because if class grows, but theoretically, the number would increase with it or decrease with it, and so
Okay.
you would still keep the same percentage.
So for students that earned their diploma in the summer, they wouldn't count in this number.
So they would, that gets counted back to the previous year.
Okay.
Some of the things that we're working on, specifically, I want to address secondary there a little bit, but some of the things we're working on, like at middle school, we have students who failed or didn't do as well as we had hoped. They are basically being double blocked in reading and math, meaning that most students are on an A/B schedule, and if you're struggling and need extra skill support, then you're getting reading and math every day. And so they're getting double dose there. At the high school level, one of the things we've instituted is freshman seminar this year. I think I presented to y'all earlier that we're really looking forward to seeing the impact that has on students as well as they come into the high school, going over some of the different things that they can be doing for that freshman year to really prepare themselves as they move up through. Also, along with that, we are tracking students much more closely than we have in the past, and we have regular meetings with high school and middle school and elementary school admin. And the focus this year is really focusing on data and what are we doing with each of these students and following them along as we go throughout the year.
The board was just to add another nuance or interesting component to accreditation. If a parent refuses a child to take the test, which happens often.
What do you say, take a test? What do you mean, like the
Take an
SOL?
SOL test.
That's all.
Okay.
It counts as a fail to the school division. It's not something that's thrown out. And, compared to the state, we have a disproportionate number that choose to do that. And they, by the state rule, they have the right to do that, and it is counted as a fail. So when you see a 0 in our data, it's not that a kid got no questions correct, it is a parent refusal to test. That number is growing.
So let's talk about why that is.
There's high stakes testing and anxiety with kids. So we have parents that go, I'm not putting especially in elementary school where it's not related to credit. In high school, you need to pass it to get the verified credit and graduate.
Right.
The 3rd grade reading test, if you don't pass it, doesn't mean you don't go to 4th grade. So you can refuse, and parents legally have the right to refuse. It's just interesting that it counts as a 0 against the school. I'm all for that right. If a parent wants to do that for whatever reason, it's just an interesting piece that it counts against us is
I don't think I knew that.
what's that?
I don't think I knew that.
So,
Like I realized that they were optional, but I did not realize.
Well,
That it counts, I've
We don't use the
never
word
heard
optional.
that it counts.
Well, so it's presented as being optional.
okay.
Just gonna leave it at that.
All
Yeah.
right, we'll leave it. So
Sometimes.
the state is, and I don't know if Ross is gonna talk about, the state is working to redo the entire accreditation system, because as we talk through this, you can see there are some pieces that are broken.
Yeah.
So the state is working on that and trying to fast track a different system for accreditation. We're following it closely.
So what they want to do, right? So the Board of Education wants to have more of a weighted type of model
I
where
want
you
to
get
clarify
more
something I said
credit
though.
for
My
higher
child is
schools.
presenting it to me as optional.
Your
I
practice.
don't know how it's being presented to my child.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it,
Okay,
fair enough.
clarification there.
Thank you.
So what did you say, Kristen, about a weighted
Yeah,
test?
so just this is all happening, very currently, is that the Board of Education is saying they want more of a weighted type of system where you get more credit for higher scores and less credit for lower scores.
Right now, in grades 3 through 8, if you show growth, like you don't pass, but you show tremendous growth from fall to spring or spring to spring, it counts the same as if you passed it. The state is looking at a model that if you pass advanced, it counts a little more than you pass. And then if you get growth, it counts a little less than a pass and those components. So what we'll present to you a year from now may look radically different, and there'll be impacts to scores.
Because by the standard now, it's really just pass-fail. I mean, meaning is that you're either accredited or you're not, but you're accredited even with these things, but at the end of the day, you're either accredited or you're not accredited. And really, it doesn't help you, because it doesn't matter if you, other than our things, it doesn't matter if you're 90% or you're 67%, you're still accredited.
Correct.
And that's really not a good test of accreditation.
And I wasn't going to share this data point, but I find it interesting. So there's an educational group that took the percentage of kids that passed in each district across every test you get. We give 29 different tests. So the percentage of kids that passed every test you have, and then compared them across the state. So you have 132 school divisions, rank them best to worst, under just connecting to Mr. Mead's thing. So in 2022, we were 29th in the state. That's really good.
It's pretty.
This year, we moved up to 22nd. So I'd like to be top 10, really number one, but it's just an interesting, different way to compare schools versus.
It'd be interesting to line up the funding alongside that.
We did not do that piece. We have lined them up, but
We would be first. Yeah.
so I think per pupil when you rank them up, we definitely when you cross those together. But it was just an interesting way to look at schools. There are various ways to look at schools, but on the accreditation front, we have work to do, specifically with students with disabilities. But we keep marching forward with the.
We talk about this though, and this is the real sell that is hard for the public to understand. When you talk about students with disabilities, what the average taxpayer does not understand in New Kent County is that we're responsible for what you're saying, Dr. Nichols and Mr. Miller, but we are not granted any more funding for those. The meaning is that if a student has a severe disability and we have to provide an additional aid for them, or they need additional services, it's not like they give us an extra $5,000 a year per pupil just to provide extra services for a student with disabilities. Am I correct in saying that?
And you want to connect to that with 6B.
I mean, it's
We do get additional funding.
yeah, but it's not
But it's
significant.
not- it's
It doesn't
not
pay the whole
great.
salary for a new teacher because we have a 1-to-10 ratio in a classroom because these students have severe disabilities and their testing standards could be the same.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would argue that special education, state, probably nationally, is funded the way it should be. or
Correct.
funded to the level it is.
And if they're weighting your scores, that's not a really fair weight, because if you want those scores to rise, then you need to somehow provide the resources to help that occur, and to try to do it internally with the current resources that you have. Sometimes it's not a realistic ask for some divisions to do that.
But it's one of the reasons that I like the growth measure.
Correct.
What you're doing is saying, I'm getting Brian Nichols in fall, he's here. Now Brian Nichols is here in spring because we've done these pieces. That's where the growth piece really resonates with me. Because I may be starting from farther behind than the Swinford, in third.
Correct.
So, how much growth are we making with every kid that walks through, and then the supports ability.
So, Mr. Miller, for these numbers right here, what are the in-between percentages? Like, how do you get to 100%? Meaning is that, so if we have 320 graduates,
Right.
how do you see what I'm saying?
Dropout rate, basically, if we have 320 people who enter in ninth grade, 4 years later, we're looking for those 100, 300, however many.
Right.
That's 100%.
Right, okay.
The graduation completion index, there, you eliminate, so for accreditation, I go backwards, there's like 3 different measurements for graduation, 3 different ways we calculate it.
Okay.
This is one of those. So your advanced diplomas, and your standard diplomas, you gotta get everybody into one of those 2 categories. So student goes into our IACP program and gets a GED. They get a reduced percentage on this one.
Oh, okay.
On one of the calculations, they don't count at all. And then anyone who's in that dropout rate, they count against you on the graduation completion index.
Well, and also, Mr. Mead, I don't think we'll ever be at 100%. We have kids that we're gonna keep a lot
Yeah.
longer than 4 years.
Well, and I guess that's kind of my point, is that's a metric that really doesn't show up there, that if they have to repeat certain subjects, they were scheduled to graduate, but they didn't, but they continued on, so now that person is taken out of the mix, basically. Okay,
Right, we have some kids that we keep into their 20s, because legally we're allowed to do that in this
Correct.
case, and we transition piece. We take every kid and we try to give them exactly what they need and then push them forward, but yeah, the 100% is,
yeah, it's just being able to capture all those students. That makes sense.
So with the governor's all-in plan,
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, with the focus on absenteeism, literacy, and learning. I know it's early, but what is that gonna mean for New Kent County in terms of funding and programs and results?
So Haney's gonna talk a little bit about the funding piece coming up, and some of that is still unknown, so we have not received a council related to funding. There is a portion of it that is set aside, it's one-time funds for learning loss. And that can be to provide additional intervention, and the governor's used the word tutoring. We do that in a lot of different forms, but it is an opportunity to expand some programs. It is an opportunity to provide additional support for students. The metric that they utilize to qualify who would get that is pretty clear. So we've done the legwork on our end to see which students do qualify. 4th grade through 8th grade is kind of those are the kids with the testing history.
Yes.
So we're working that through internally right now. And as soon as we have the funding amounts, the plan is to distribute that to the schools. We have some schools that will be bringing in additional personnel during the day. So after school tutoring sounds great, but we compete with 9 million other things. So one of our pushes is, can we find time during the day with additional personnel this fund provides? Because if the kid is in school, we have that captured. So if you roll out a Saturday program, which I'm not advocating for, or even some of our summer work, it's hard to make sure that kid is there. So, but it'll be a combination, Ms. Winford, as we stand it up, we'll provide more information of in school and after school. This money is also until 2026, so it does give us some additional summer of more expansion opportunities. We talked about that internally as well, with the focus on literacy and math. So,
Yeah, one of the things we met last week, the state superintendent's going around doing regional meetings and going over the intricacies of all this. And so then we're meeting with school level teams to talk through what are the things we already have in place. Because like when you look at the all-in plan, like it has specific hours and all that type of thing. There are some of our programs we already have in place that do a lot of that work. And so then we're looking at, how can we expand on those opportunities for students, and then what do we need to introduce that's new? And looking at, as Dr. Nichols said, we're looking at, we already do some during the day tutoring, we do some after school programming, mostly in the springtime, and then we have our summer programming. We're looking at how do we capitalize on all of that to get this growth, and we're mostly focused on reading and math.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Morheim is going to present to us the per pupil expenditures.
Mr. Mead, board members, Dr. Nichols. Tonight we're bringing to you our per pupil expenditures for operations. We are required to bring this to you annually. And what this is based upon, we do an annual school report each year. Every finance division submits that report to DOE. It's actually due in September. So we usually won't get that information until a year later. So you'll notice that this presentation is a 21-22 state average for per pupil, and it shows you what our actual 21-22 expense was lined up to that state average. And then what we do is we just project out and kind of show you what our budgeted per pupil amount is for the upcoming, for last year, which we're getting ready to submit that report now, and then for the upcoming school year. I'll just point out that our federal per pupil did increase quite a bit, and that is specifically from some of our funding that we're receiving for COVID responses. Everything else pretty much stayed the same. I will say that overall per pupil funding with the 133 divisions in Virginia, we're sitting right at 130 with this particular state average. There's different ways of looking at that, but I think we are very efficient with the funding that we do have. I'm very proud of the work that we do. I do think that we could also advocate for some additional funding as well to support those efforts.
So I have a question, because the numbers are basically flat from for the last 2 years, or I guess for what we're projecting. And that is basically due to
that's really, similar amount of percentages of the state average based on our local composite staying the same or around about the same, local support funding, that kind of going up basically with our, ADM that we're budgeting for. And then not a lot of change. Some of that is just not reflecting additional, this is original budget, not amended. So some of the additional appropriations that we've had for ESSER funding and things like that isn't maybe in the budgeted figure, but it will be in our actual expenses.
So basically, there's no escalation that will track with annual inflation.
No, I think if anything, we will see some additional support in the state sales tax figures and potentially some of this additional funding that we're receiving, even if it's one time, you will see some fluctuation in those line items, in the upcoming years.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask a question, please?
No, not yet.
Just wanted to know if the public access this data online.
So actually, this is in board docs for the public to see. It is posted. Also, this data comes off of table 15, which is on the VDOE's website. So you can actually pull down any division and look at all of these categories. I keep Excel spreadsheets that sorts it by each different level, just annually to look at kind of where we are. But the public can do that as well.
Randy, you said 130
Yes, sir.
out of 131. So
That was my question.
Newton is incredibly efficient
Yep.
with the funds that we receive. And you've already seen the outcomes that we're getting with this. I told you 22 out of 131 in terms of that achievement metric. 130 out of 100, or 130 out of 131 in per pupil spending. So now I will always advocate for more funds, but what we receive, we work very well. So credit to her team, and really just the work that school division does.
Yeah, thank you. That really is incredible. And I think it's a consistent argument too for many school divisions that are much larger than ours that have incredible per pupil spending, and where we align with some, especially some of the advancements that Mr. Miller said in accreditation. I think it really goes to, for some school divisions, they have the money, it's just a matter of how they're using it. And I think that is a testament to how efficient our team has worked over the years, and especially since the pandemic, and having such flat numbers of being reimbursed for the growth that we have experienced in our county and in our community. And I'm sure, and I think this is an interesting concept, because Dr. Nichols, you put it out so well, and maybe the public doesn't remember, but I remember when we had this conversation right at the height of the pandemic in March of 2019 or 2020, is our student population got down to almost 3,100 students. And based on today, we have 3,400 students.
35.
Yeah, you know, yeah, so when you look at, we have gained 400 students, and when you compare that to funding, the numbers just don't add up. I mean, when you look at that, and so we've had to obviously hire and have a lot more overhead expenditures because we've obtained 300 more students in the last 2.5 years. And so I think it really is, I mean, it is incredible that we have been able to staff all of our schools in an appropriate way and still meet the accreditation standards at above average, and knowing we have gained 300 more students and have done that efficiently and effectively. So,
And we've expanded programs and opportunities.
yeah, and when you add that, when you look at our per pupil spending, I don't think anybody they have no leverage to whine about anything, you know.
Just me, I would like to clarify something I said earlier, just to make sure I stated correctly. When a parent refusal, it goes against our participation rate connected to accreditation. 95% of your kids have to test, and if they don't, you have, you know,
Gotcha.
it's not good, but not necessarily against our pass rate. So just wanted to,
That's good.
I misstated that initially, just wanted to clarify that.
So that, I mean, I think it's incredible when you look at that per pupil spending and based on the growth of our community and the standards that the state is expecting from us on top of that.
And to be clear, we do receive additional state funding with the ADM increase. It can be difficult when we're growing at such a fast rate during the year because you do all of your planning during your budget process.
So you're always a year behind a lot of
Trying
times.
to catch up in the middle of the year with local matches and things of that nature, but the team's done a fantastic job with that.
Yep, so thank you, Haney and your team and Dr. Nichols and HR and Allison and all of those folks just to make it happen so that we're still at the standard that we are today.
And I have the next item as well. Tonight I'm bringing to you a request to appropriate security equipment grant. And with that grant, the grant is $28,895. With that grant, there comes a local match requirement of $7,223.75. This was actually leftover state funding per se from 21-22 that we were awarded at the end of this fiscal year. And we actually discussed with BDOE a project that we already had completed at Newton Elementary School for the vestibule, and that is an eligible expense. So what we would like to do is appropriate the grant and the match, and then we'll actually shift that expense over into this funds to save us some additional funds for Newton Elementary School renovation. So that's the request.
Thank you, and that does come before us as an action item. Our next two items, Mr. Hockman for CIP transfers for safety and security, and then athletics and track repair.
Good evening again. I will now bring before you a request for a CIP transfer in the amount of $36,279. That would be for safety and security. That is broken into 4 different categories, accounts. As you can see, one would be for contract services. In that area, we are looking to, in the future, have a contract for bringing dogs into our schools to provide some safety, and we have an idea what we want to do with that. Non-capital equipment, as we talked earlier, we had talked about stop the bleed kits and some other things, so we are going to be ordering some of that along with school safety signs, which go on the perimeter doors of our school. Travel, that would come for providing some travel for the division safety team. This past year, as I said, we went to Hampton and did some really good work. And then finally, some other operating supplies, which would include some branding that we're doing at all of our schools. And that total amount, once again, is $36,279.
And the branding, are you talking about like marketing materials and signage and things of that nature?
That is correct.
Okay. And then the athletic transfer?
All right. For the athletic transfer, once again, we're looking at an amount of $37,627. Right now, our competition track, which is at the main stadium, has some areas that desperately need to be repaired. There's been heavy wear and tear. So what we need to do is repair those areas and then also provide a coating over the entirety of the track, which would probably give us 2 to 3 more years where it could be utilized. So that is necessary at this point to ensure that we'll have a safe environment. Included in that would also be painting the track. The lines right now, if you've been out there, it's very faded. We do like to host some events, and we need to have an environment there where other teams feel good about coming here. Right now, it would not be safe. So we had some folks out, we have a cost on that. That would allow us to get that to a safe place and also allow us to potentially expand our invitational track meet, get some more teams to come.
So, Mr. Hockman kind of covered it. This would, they believe for 2 to 3 years, this would provide that opportunity. That also fits with our time frame in doing a larger athletic complex renovation, which could include the track piece. I do have a question. Mr. Hockman said the competition track. Do we have another track somewhere?
We do not. We have a track around the elementary school.
I was just trying to figure out the non-competition track.
The lower gym and the main gym.
I try to make it sound.
That's called a walking track.
You made it sound really nice, but I was just trying to, like, where's the other?
Thank you, Dr.
We had done some work a few years ago on the track, or did we put that off?
No, we did. We had a hole basically because of it was a plumbing issue which created
Yeah, it's like a sinkhole because we had a water leak underneath the ground and it
so we had
eroded
to
the
fix that a
ground.
couple of years ago. So yes.
And we didn't do the whole track at that time.
No, that was just that specific
Patch.
area because lane 8 it was not operable. Lane 8 outside 100. Okay. My track knowledge was
No,
there.
we don't, the high school track is not open to the public. Meaning, where it's unlocked and, the community can go in and run and walk on the track, correct? So it's locked.
It's for school use during the day.
Okay.
The schools do utilize it for health and PE classes.
Right.
Yep.
Right,
But in the evening, it is locked up.
correct. Thank you.
So if we did a massive renovation in 3 years or in 2 to 3 years, would the current track have to come out?
We believe that in order to do the field work, we're gonna impact the track with
Okay.
rotors and that kind of stuff. So we would put it together as a track and field combo. Because we think in order to be able to redo the field, we would need to redo the track. So we got a price for that as well in this process.
And the people that we spoke with, sort of the experts in this, the 2 to 3, I think we can manage and keep this in good shape. I don't know that there's a lot we're going to be able to do after that. So regardless of what we do with the field, the track is something that's going to come back up.
Yes.
2 to 3 is about the life end of that.
So have you at this point projected any scheduling for that? Because I can't imagine that's a summer project.
For what, the repairs right here?
To do the long-term.
The long term, ideally, it would start as soon as the fall sports were over. And then we would have to, so it is not this year, we would have to reorganize where
You would have to literally close down the field.
we'd have to close down, so spring sports, we'd have to relocate, outdoor.
Probably over
soccer.
to the other field. I would think.
You need that lead time to be ready for the following fall.
If you start at the close of football season, typically if your football team does well, you're playing or ending right around that Thanksgiving break. Your hope is to have that field functional April 1. And that's if weather cooperates and things of that nature. So it is a tight window.
But is it like a massive track renovation? Isn't that like a couple of $100,000
It's
though?
about 2.5, 250.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, yeah.
That's the most recent quote we received for a complete overhaul of the track.
It's still cheaper than 1.5 million though, for a turf field.
Yes, sir.
But that's coming too. I think it is too. And the Board of Supervisors are gonna pay for it, they just don't know it yet.
I guess that's it.
Okay.
The next item is the CIP transfer for technology. Mr. Terry?
So, thank you again. we're asking for $200,000 to transfer for building a bridge, kind of what we talked about last year, where we're working on our replacement cycles, we're purchasing equipment and trying to build that capacity to the ongoing budget so that we, are injecting the right amount of cash to buy equipment. So I need to buy a stash of laptops for teachers. We're going to continue to purchase the touchscreen TV devices for the classrooms that will replace those aging Promethean boards that we have. We outfitted Newton Elementary and Watkins with those devices last year. We put 15 in the middle school and 15 in the high school. We're going to buy more for both of those schools. And then as we're expanding that Wi-Fi infrastructure and everything becomes wireless, I also need to purchase more Wi-Fi access points and refresh some of the other older access points, because more wireless devices means we need more wireless network capacity. So that's kind of what we're moving towards.
So we're just kind of getting to the 21st century, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, late 20th century, mid 21st.
So if you would say on a continuum, how far do you think we're behind of where we should be?
So I think we have very good equipment and very good services and lots of great software that our students are using. We have a great replacement cycle already in place for our secondary education platform. The pandemic kind of forced us into a one-to-one initiative with the elementaries, but we never really planned on that. So I think we made use of some one-time funds there. But keep in mind, some of those funds are 3 years behind us now, and so you need to refresh that equipment on about a 4 to 5 year cycle. We have not been historically great at doing that, and I'm trying to get us there. I think we were more on like a 10-year cycle, and I'm trying to get us to a 5-year cycle so that within the next 10 years or so, we're on that 3 to 4 year sweet spot.
And the reason why I asked that question is because I think historically, I mean, you guys have been here much longer than me. I don't think it has been a big budget item that we have tackled for major expenses, have we? I mean, like we don't have a $400,000 IT school, for replacement cycles, correct?
Interactive whiteboards, smart boards, Promethean, those have been in schools for well over a decade and are non-functional.
The original ones were provided by the Educational Foundation.
So these touch panels, Mr. Terry has been implementing over the past year and a half. Pre-pandemic, staff didn't have laptops. They were utilizing Chromebooks and desktops. So in order to teach in the 21st, you need a high-powered laptop, to do the work. So we were able to partner with the county and secure laptops for teachers. But that's a refresh that needs to now happen. So Mr. Terry's been very good about kind of building out what these will need to be. His point about elementary is elementary gets old secondary Chromebooks. Chromebooks aren't supposed to last that long. So we spend a lot of time with maintenance of elementary Chromebooks. So we need to get to a point where we give them new Chromebooks too. And that's a fairly significant expense. And how do you do that? And how do you refresh it and build that into a budget?
And that's now integrated into our regular operating budget.
That's where we're going. So with the elementary piece. So we have a plan, secondary, 6-12. But Mr. Terry's working on the plan for K-12. And do you do it all in the same year? So you have a heavy budget number in 1 year, and then 4 years later you have...
Yeah, because I guess my concern is in the future that every year so you're not automatically always having $200,000 CIP transfers, then the next thing you know, in 4 years, you've spent almost $1 million and you don't have any money left in capital improvements because we're having to do one-time transfers.
We also use some textbook funding.
Oh yeah, can we start doing that now because everything's gone more digital?
We've used some textbook, and we also have a BPSA funding source that we're able to use for one-to-one devices, but only if we purchase them. So we typically in the past have leased those devices, so we've not been able to utilize those funds. But Mr. Terry really has been working on a transition plan. And we've had a lot of conversation about building this into the budget, and what it might look like, and how we could either purchase units or lease them, and how we could get all of the different replacement cycles built into that process.
Right, so one component of this purchase that I'm really excited about is we're going to be purchasing some staff laptop devices. Along with that purchase, we plan on purchasing an accidental damage protection plan, which we already have on our Chromebooks, but we have never had on our staff devices before. And so what that means is for 3 years, after the purchase, we can send them on what we call our milk runs to our repair depot twice a week. Crack screens, liquid spills, any of those sorts of damages, we get that unit back. Right now, when that happens, can we fix it in-house?
Or we just
what
gotta
does it
eat
cost
it.
to send it out? Or this thing just became a piece of trash. So I think some of those methodologies will help us, be more sustainable moving forward. Because again, when a teacher, when their laptop breaks, they need another one like yesterday, right? And so we have to build capacity for having inventory in stock. This is the last year of our 3-year lease in secondary, so we're going to be evaluating, are we going to do secondary again? Are we going to do the whole district? Like where is that sweet spot going to be with cost and effectiveness and maintaining the fact that we have to keep devices that these kids can test on, as we talked earlier.
Yeah.
So the 6-year-old Chromebooks.
Yeah, and I think that's a great explanation, and that is an explanation I think we as a board would all agree on because what I really hear you say is like $1 million. That's what I really hear you say. And that type of expenditure, that's the type of thing that the Board of Supervisors need to hear. So we can budget it all we want, but it's like, you realize that this is $1 million expenditure for us to keep moving forward. And so when we ask these things, the Board of Supervisors really they know that this is like a real expense. This is not like, well, if we can get it, that's great. That's like, no, we have to have this to function as a school division. So this is not one of those just extraordinary it's like, it's gotta happen. And so that's the Mr. Terry needs to sell that to the Board of Supervisors because.
Mr. Terry's long-range planning will get us out and come to you for CIP transfer of $200,000 because it'll be built into our comprehensive.
Correct. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Terry, for looking out for the school division and moving us
I have
forward.
one quick question. When we're talking about, do teachers still have phones, desk phones in the classroom?
They do.
Do we need those in there?
We're exploring those options. I've been looking into utilizing soft phones. Mr. Hyman, who just gave the safety presentation, we've also been hearing best practices are going back to two-way intercom systems in classrooms with call buttons because that's more of a direct line. I will also tell you that from the budgetary funding aspect, I hate buying Cisco voice over IP phones for every teacher who loses one. That's a pretty expensive device to have to put in a classroom, and the teacher gets 2 phone calls a week and is using it as a voicemail. So we're looking at cost savings there as well. I agree. I do not like purchasing those voice over IP phones. They're expensive.
Okay. Thank you.
So you're thinking an intercom system may be the most efficient way to do that?
Right. There are some concerns on the county side because right now they can dial 911 off of those phones, which is another security concern. We want teachers to be able to call 911, but I'm looking at what's called a soft phone. So just like we're streaming this meeting, there's capabilities where you can put a phone on the computer itself. Yeah, Cisco Jabber would be one of those options.
That makes a lot of sense. Good. Great question. The next item is the old business, a report on opening schools and enrollment data. Mr. Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Mead. So I did talk to you a little bit about opening schools before we opened, but now we're open. So I'll update you on that. There we go. These are our kids. They were twinning on the first day of school.
They're not actresses.
No, that's not stop clip art or anything. Those are our kids. We're very excited about the open school. It's so good to have our kids back. So before we move forward, I want to look back a little bit. So board members, you have this. This will be on the website soon if it's not already up there. This is the first year we've done a year in review. So this is a public-facing year in review. Our team and our schools accomplished a tremendous amount. So we wanted to capture some of that and put it in categories. So I won't read any of them to you, but you have instructional accomplishments, huge focus last year on organizational leadership and safety, and then we won some awards in communication and community relations. So we just wanted to capture that. And accomplishments are good, but what about our data? So the backside of this document has some pretty impressive data points for us, including over 855 college credits earned last year by our students. We talked about the 3 E's, 327 CT, career and technical education credits earned, credentials earned. Our buses drove over 1.5 million miles last year. Just an incredible statistic when you think about what we do. Leslie and her team, almost 400,000 meals served. So just some good data points about the work that we're doing. Mr. Miller did talk about accreditation. 97% of our SOL scores are at or above state average. So just continuing to lead the way. Our state championship team was here tonight. Also 6 regional championships. Some championships we won for the first time as well. So just a little by the numbers. Ashley Meredith, a member of our team who's tremendous, is going to hyperlink those data points. So it takes you right to the data source. We don't make any of these numbers up. They're given to us by folks, and you can kind of get to where those numbers are coming from. So, so before we move forward, just wanted to stop on that year in review for 1 second, and now we'll jump in to first day NK 2023. So just a nice little visual of our first day, which went incredibly well. Also in the opening of schools, I always talk to you about enrollment. So here is an enrollment update, just so you can see where we are. So to Mr. Mead's point, 2020, we were just under 3,100 kids, so 3040. 2023-24, we're now at 3567, roughly. This includes pre-K in it. And this is as of last week when I put this presentation together. So that number moves quite a bit every day. So you can see a growth of 500 kids in this time period. We're anticipated to have another 500 in the next 5 years. So we will be over 4,000 projected. So Ms. Barber and Ms. Seskin.
The middle school has a bubble in it.
Yes, the middle school now has the bubble that was in elementary.
Okay.
If you go by, our freshman class was over 300 strong at the high school. So the high school you see has that consistency. The lowest grade levels we have right now are 4th and 5th at 241 and 251 total. So the middle school numbers should, in theory, go down a little bit over the next couple of years, which will give us a little bit of breathing room there. But I will tell you, people are moving in left and right, so it's really hard to project that.
Our core facilities at the middle school are, what are they? I don't remember now. So close to 800.
So we've been close to 900 at one point in time. So you can make some shifts in the way you deliver lunches and those different pieces to expand that a little bit. But once you get too far over 900, it becomes really tough. Parking becomes tough. The buses coming in and out become tough, and use the facilities. So we have a couple projects, and we'll talk about that when we go into the CIP in the next couple of months to try to expand that a little bit as we look at the potential of an additional middle school at some point in time. So
That was my question, the capacity at the middle school.
So.
Oh, can you just go back one
Yes,
slide? And just, we know, but Quinton Elementary and George Watkins had the lower of the 3 middle schools because that's where the growth is anticipated in the next few years.
Correct. So when you look at those numbers, we opened New Kent Elementary intentionally high because that's where the least amount of growth was projected at that time during the process. We worked hand in hand with the county. The most growth you're going to see is in the George Watkins zone and the Quinton zone. So we intentionally opened those up significantly less in capacity because we know as we go from 3,500 kids to 4,000 kids, a lot of those students are going to be in those 2 zones based on the planning commission and then the work that's going to happen.
Do we anticipate that as you get closer to that number that we would potentially be in the position where we would have to do redistricting again? For instance, if you get to Newquan, if New Kent Elementary grows by 30 more kids.
So I made the point deliberately that at the time of redistricting, because there are several potential large-scale developments in the New Kent Elementary zone that were not on the board when we redistricted. So, Mr. Reed, I hope not, but it's entirely possible that redistricting comes about.
I just see that New Kent Elementary will max out.
Correct.
Based on your projections, and then
elementary school over 700.
Yeah, that's what, so then you're forced to redistrict back to Watkins and then back to Quinton
So I mean,
Elementary.
the Berkshire community alone is now, I think, 87% built out, and I think 2 years ago it was in the 60s. So I mean, existing neighborhoods have now close to completely built out. So we are seeing that and keeping an eye on that as well. So just community and communication. So we continue digital community engagement. So very active through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So I hope you enjoyed getting to know our new staff members and our students of the week and all of those different things. We'll continue to expand some of those opportunities. We do still have the GPS transportation app. It's probably the most favorite app of our families who ride the buses. And we do have transportation to all of our houses in New Kent. I get that question, especially with New Kent Elementary and the parent drop-off line. So, but that app lets you know where the bus is, if the bus changes and so forth. So just another great communication tool for families.
Are we doing any significant double runs right now? Have we kind of solved that?
That's a great question, Mr. Mead. So we do have a couple of double runs that we're doing. So just to clarify, a double run is exactly what it sounds like. So bus goes and gets a group of kids and then brings them back or drops them off and then they come back and do another one. Transportation and schools have worked together to identify some quick routes. We have a daycare center not too far from this building right now. We have a lot of kids that go there after school. So we run that really quick. And by the time the buses are getting ready to go, that bus is already back for the second run.
Loop,
so
okay.
we try to do that where we can. It's not the ideal, it's not the best solution in the world, but we've been strategic about where we do that and how we do it. So, yes, sir. Some additional community engagement opportunities. It is year 2 of community advisory, so I do want to share that. The initial meeting is October 10th at New Kent High School, 5 o'clock. So if you are watching this and you're not a part of parent advisory because you don't have a kid in our schools, but you want to be involved, there is that opportunity there. And so Johanna, email address is there if you're interested in participating. There are no minimum standards or we expect you to show up and contribute. That's kind of what we want. So I do want to announce publicly Community Town Hall. This is the 2nd annual town hall. We started this last year. We did it at Quinton Elementary last year, so we're looking at October 26th. This time we're going to do it at New Kent Elementary because we are working on the potential of a huge renovation project there. So we'd like to do a school tour and then provide some information sessions at that event. So more details coming soon. This is the first place we're showing that, and we'll do some public-facing marketing on it as well. So if you came to the Quinton one, hopefully you saw you got a lot of good information, you got some questions answered. We'd like to do something similar at New Kent Elementary. Mr. Terry, I believe that concludes my presentation.
Okay, great, thank you, Dr. Nichols. You're up for the next one for the adjustment of the school board meeting calendar.
Yes, sir. All right, so looking ahead at our board meeting calendar, so we have 2 opportunities in October. We've been very efficient with our reports and our requirements, so we are not in need of a work session in October. So board members, I am proposing that we move, instead of having the 2nd and the 16th, that we just hold the 16th meeting. And that meeting would be here at the courthouse. And then the other revision, and this is really due to scheduling, both on staff and board side, to move the November 6th meeting back 1 week and hold that November meeting on the 13th. So those are the 2 potential school board meeting adjustments. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding those. As assuming an affirmative vote by the board, we would immediately update calendars and publish that information. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Next item is the budget update. Ms. Moorhan?
Me, board members, Dr. Nichols. The governor introduced his budget in December, and we had a skinny budget, approved, adopted budget with a lot of conversation about additional funding coming for schools. And we did not really do anything with that during our budget process because we really didn't know what was gonna happen. And up until recently, we weren't sure, but they actually did meet in a General Assembly special session, and we do have a new budget. As Dr. Nichols said, we are waiting details of that budget specifically through the calc tool to really know what does that mean for New Kent, and a little bit of the nuancing of how do we use those funds and how does it roll from year to year and those types of things. So we will come back with a formal plan, but we just wanted to update you kind of on what we have. And what we do know is we have kind of 3 pots of money. So one is really for flexible use. It's a one-time funding. It will go through 2026 apparently, so we're not quite sure kind of how that rolls over, how that works. There will be some reporting requirements with that funding. So we will have to somehow detail back to VDOE how those funds are spent. One thing that we're encouraged to focus on, learning loss and recovery and preparation of the Virginia Literacy Act, with about 70% of those funds being focused on high intensity tutoring, which Mr. Miller kind of addressed some things that we're already doing, which will help us, with those funding to be able to boost that up or be sure to continue the things that we're doing. Also, that specific flexible funding source does provide for additional operating and infrastructure as well. And again, there will be reporting with all of that. One thing I would like to say is just with a lot of the one-time funding, we're very careful with how we spend those funds. A lot of people have used ESSER funding and things like that for salaries and benefits, and we've done a really good job of not necessarily doing that, or doing it in a way that we know that we've planned for the future. If those programs are successful, that we're able to kind of weave them into our general operating budget down the road. So we're definitely be keeping that in mind and trying to do the same thing with these funds. Additional bucket is the support cab, the support staff. So what they've done is they've added 3, so it used to be 21 per 1,000 students. Now that number is going to 24. So we will have a little bit more flexibility with that funding that will be infused into our budget, and I would say definitely that we'll be using that funding for some additional staff requirements, some things that we may need to do in the current year to really support some of the positions that you were mentioning earlier, Mr. Mead. And then the third bucket is an additional 2%. This is a weird one because its funding is effective January 1. So it's kind of a mid-year salary increase proposed, and they fund, we get about half of the funding for what we want. So we'll get about a half of a 1%. And if we wanted to do anything with that, we would have to fund most likely some type of local match for those fundings. There have been many divisions that have talked about not taking those funds because they're not able to now match the local requirement, being that it's kind of after the fact and after the budget has been processed. There are some divisions that kind of stepped out over the ledge and built some of that into their already planned budgets, and they were kind of waiting for these funds to come through. But that is a look back 2 years, so we can go back to 23 and 24 to look at any adjustments that we've made overall across the district to count towards that extra 2%. So we'll certainly look at that. We'll run some creative types of scenarios and things that we may be able to address for decompression of our teacher scale, things of that nature to, again, creatively make sure that we're able to secure these funds and use them in the smartest way possible and move us forward.
Penny, I think it's important with that one, so we're getting the funding starting January 1st. We want to make sure we're going to get the whole funding the following year so we can continue that raise for folks starting September 1st or August or however they do that. So a lot of this is in the details that we've yet to see. So we're very fiscally responsible. We talked about that a lot tonight. We just want to make sure whatever we do, we can continue to do for our staff. Nothing is worse than saying you're getting this and they're going, okay, no, you're not. or we can't keep it or so forth, so.
Because I think we've run into situations like this where sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry, like you said. And depending on what the number is, then do you do it as a one-time type of situation? You know, where then it's not built into your budget, then it says, look, if we have $100,000, do we just distribute $100,000 among all of our employees one time versus trying to make something happen that we don't even know if it's going to happen again in the future, and then we're locked into a number.
Right, and fortunately or unfortunately, whichever side you're on, these funds you cannot use them for one time. So
Yeah, correct, and that's the problem.
we're not allowed to even, in years past, there have been funds that we've been provided where it was an option of whether we did a bonus or an actual like VRS salary-based increase. So we do not have that option for this particular funding source that they've added.
Which really puts most localities in a box of what you can do.
Yeah, it's really tough, especially in the middle of the year. As you know, we pay different monthly groups, 10-month, 11-month, 12-month. Their payments actually run like August through July or September through August. So when you say January 1, that looks differently for different groups, and is it really mid-year, you're really paying, 8 months at that new rate, so then again, it has some other complications, that comes along with that. All things that we can do, work through, and hope to, but just wanted to kind of let you all know some of the challenges around that type of a mid-year adjustment.
So as we get the calc tool, we'll come back with a proposed plan and publicly talk through that with you as a board and have some recommendations so that we're ready to go. So I would anticipate that we have something for you at the October meeting. We thought we'd have a calc tool last week, not yet.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Moreham. We are now to citizens' comments. We do have one person that signed up, so I will read the script. Before we begin, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight to speak. Please note that the comments are limited to 3 minutes. Once the timer sounds, please promptly finish your comments, return to your seat as customary. For the school board not to make comments during the citizen comment period, please make sure your contact information is provided on the sign-up sheet if you would like someone to follow up with you. And thank you again for speaking. Our speaker this evening is Ms. Trivett. Ms. Trivett, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Leslie Trivett. I have 2 students in Clinton Elementary in 5th grade. A suggestion for the board. I have noticed in many school board videos that they are having students lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And it's very touching. It's a really good exercise for our students to be civically involved, and it might also encourage the students to start attending our meetings where we can receive input from our students and have them come up as speakers on certain topics also. So please consider that. I think it would be a lot of fun for the students. And it's really adorable to see the little ones do it. Some information regarding the topic that we talked about today, the SOLs, and why some parents may choose to have their children opt out of them. I understand that under SB 427, passed in 2016, the school district may have up to 5% of their students opting out without penalty. Some parents of children with disabilities may choose to opt out their children so they're not being tested inappropriately, or inappropriate testing that's not at their current level. And there is also the effect of high pressure testing. A lot of parents don't want to put this unnecessary pressure on elementary school students when their grade is not affected, their passing is not affected. It can really be a concern. I have a student who is a highly conscientious child and very sensitive, and the pressure that rolls down from the top, the teachers feel it because in places where teachers' performance is linked to SOL scores, the pressure from the teachers is very high. There's also a lot of excitement generated about the SOLs. It's a very high pressure state in the classroom for many students. So if we can And also, I received a notice during SOLs that came home in a backpack that said, please make sure during SOL testing to feed your children a healthy, nutritious breakfast and to get them to school on time. Well, for parents who are already doing that, that's going to have no effect on us. We're going to do that anyway. And for parents who aren't doing that, that's not going to have any effect on them because they're not doing it anyway. So even the high pressure is coming home to parents, and it's a bit of a condescending message that was coming home to parents. So please reconsider the high pressure state atmosphere that is coming around SOLs. I think if it could be ratcheted down a little bit, you'd have more parents and more students who would forego opting out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ribbit. We appreciate your comments. Now to our action items. We have 5 action items on the agenda here that we need to talk about. It says, so the first action item is the approval of the appropriation of school safety grants. So do I hear a motion to approve the appropriation of school safety grant and transfer of local matching funds as presented?
I move we approve the appropriation of the school safety grant and transfer of local matching funds.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It has been approved that we will appropriate the necessary funds. The next item is, do I hear a motion to approve the CIP transfer for safety and security as presented?
I'll make a motion that we approve the CIP transfer for safety and security as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We will approve the CIP transfer as presented. The next item is, do I hear a motion to approve the CIP transfer for athletic track repair as presented?
I move that we approve the CIP transfer for athletics as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved for the transfer for the athletic repair. The next item, do I hear a motion to approve the CIP transfer for technology as presented?
I move we approve the CIP transfer for technology as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and so we will approve the CIP transfer as presented. And the last action item is, do I hear a motion to approve the school board meeting calendar adjustments as presented?
I make a motion that we approve the school board meeting calendar adjustments as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved for the school board meeting adjustment calendar. All right, now to school board comments. Ms. Barber, we'll start with you.
I think it's exciting that we're starting another school year, and it's great to see all of the happy faces and the increased social media helps really share that vision with anybody in the community. So thank you.
Ms. Daskell?
Yeah, we're off to another great school year at the Staskell household as well. I really appreciated your putting together the year in review. I think that's going to be helpful for me and for families in the future, and putting that on the website. Looking forward to the meet and greet event that's going to be hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, where all those that are seeking election to the school board have been invited. So looking forward to attending that.
Thank you. Ms. McBee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mead. Again, excited for the strong start of the school year, and I thank our families, our teaching team, and our staff. We're off to a great start. And boy, just reading this information in the year in review and hearing all the exciting things that are going on, there's a lot of great things that CPS has to offer and that have been implemented. So I look forward to more of this fabulous work, and again, encourage folks to come out to the chamber event, which is being held on Thursday for the county elections. It's a great opportunity to meet the candidates up close and personal. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBee. Ms. Swinford?
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Just want to express my gratitude to Dr. Nichols and his staff for what seems to be a pretty smooth and seamless start to the school year, particularly with things that we experienced last year that were definitely addressed with and dealt with, and a lot of improvement this year. So it's great that when we have some issues, we deal with it and put the attention on things that we need to do and get the results that we need. So thank you for that. Just want to congratulate the boys baseball team on their state championship. Spent a lot of time at the ball field myself, so it was really great to see those boys earn that championship for New Kent and for Coach Ronan as well. So congratulations to those guys, and I look forward to the outreach opportunity coming up at the town hall. That'll be exciting to be at New Kent Elementary, and I will be at Thursday's event. Bring a snack. It could be a long night, right? So anyways, thank you. That's all I have tonight.
Dr. Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Mead. I just want to say it's an honor and a privilege to begin my 5th year as superintendent in New Kent. I don't take that for granted any day, any moment. It's one of the best places to be, and I work with an incredible team. So we are off to a good start. You've seen in our SOL data, we have a lot to be proud of, but we got some really heavy lifting to do specifically with certain groups of students. I think we're up to the task. I think the reorganization that we've done and the focus work we're going to do is going to yield those results 1 year from now. So really excited about that, confident in the team that's going to lead that work. I do want to say, you don't always get to see your work up close and just under the lights. And it took this team a long time to put together the Navy Corps did that program, and to see Chief McDonald bring the kids out for the colors at the freshman seminar or at the ball field at the 50-yard line to do the national anthem. It's just a visible symbol of expanding opportunities for kids, and just incredibly proud of the team and the hard work that went into making that happen. So thank you, board members, for your continuous leadership and support. It's going to be a big year. Thank you, Mr.
Yep, thank you, Dr. Nichols, and I would just like to echo those sentiments as well. And I do want to thank Dr. Nichols and his team and Haney and Mr. Hockman and Mr. Miller. Is that it really is. I think it's an exciting time to be a part of the New Kent community, and with the task that we have as school board members to encourage those staff people to move forward. I can tell you is that this year being the chairman has just been incredible opportunity for me personally and professionally to work with such an incredible team that we come together month in and month out and week in and week out to decipher so many things within our school division. And somehow through all of that, we're able to get on the same page, to continue to move things forward. And that is an incredible task. I cannot tell you over the weekend how many people I've talked to that are going through some real challenges in their other school boards, whether it's Hanover, Henrico, or Chesterfield. And I can say that it is a true joy and a blessing to be able to work in unison with the Board of Supervisors and with the school staff to make things continue to move forward with the help of so many people in our community. And so I am grateful, much grateful for, most grateful for that is all of the help that everyone does to make it happen. And for Andrea having a student in, and Kristen having a son in, and Kristen having a daughter in, it is just great to watch them grow over the years and seeing their progress as well as the baseball team. I can tell you as a coach, when you had them when they were 13 years old and you had to make the decision whether or not this was going to be the path for them for the next 5 years of their life, and to be able to say as a coach, to watch them grow each grade and each step of the way, and then see them graduate to be productive citizens in our community is just, it's a true honor to be able to do that. So thank you so much, board, for the opportunity. And with that, we will adjourn our meeting. Our next meeting will be on 10/16 at 5:30 p.m. Historic Courthouse Boardroom. And with that, we are done at 7.